Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the show. Sorry we're a little bit late. I even screwed up that intro because you weren't supposed to have to stare at Keanu Reeves' face for 30 seconds, but that's okay. We had some technical behind-the-scenes difficulties, and I'm going to have to be doing some testing coming up. We had to kind of do a backup method. But anyway, hey there, everyone. Welcome to the show. We've got a great guest on with us tonight. I've had him on my Survivalist Prepper podcast a while back. Can everybody hear me in the chat? Somebody in the chat, let me know if you can hear me or not. Lisa just pounding on the floor like, hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't.
What's up?
I just waiting for somebody to say whether they can hear us or not. I don't want to ramble for 20 minutes and then not.
Let's go. They'll let us know. We'll hear it. So, hey, Dale. Hey, Franklin. Yeah. So, what have you been up to, man? Let's go do this show.
Well, if we're not,
what have you been up to?
If all we're doing is talking to ourselves, it's kind of pointless.
Oh, I've just been hanging out, having a good time, enjoying the pandemic. What about you guys?
Yeah, pretty much the same, man. I've been just trying to stay away from people, just kind of limit the exposure and sit back and see what goes on with all this stuff. Kind of.
Yeah, that's kind of my vibe anyway. I'm a little bit of a hermit, so pandemics and hermits kind of go well together. I like to stay low key. I like to hide out. So
you kind of fit right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, probably the weirdest thing for me was that I retired from my full-time job December 31st, 2019.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, and I had all these big plans for 2020. All the things I was going to do.
What were you planning on doing? Were you going to hit the road or do something? Or
well, I was going to write a lot more books for one thing, but I was going to write them in better locations. I expected to get out, do a lot more traveling. Most of that got harpooned. A lot of the events that I was going to got canceled. But I did get a lot of writing done. But, it kind of worked out well because I worked in the healthcare industry for 28 years. A lot of the people that I used to work with ended up sick. The guy who replaced me ended up sick. So, I'm kind of glad I missed out on all that.
Did they get sick with COVID?
Yeah, they did. Because I worked in the mental health field for 28 years. We're community mental health. So we kind of are the ER level mental health care. So, we get the people off the street and the detoxing people and the people who've laid drunk under the bridge for 2 weeks, so there's a lot of infection comes in there just during a normal time.
Yeah.
So, during COVID, there was a lot of that. So it impacted them pretty strongly. And I was glad to be able to sit home and miss out on that.
Was there a big uptick in like the number of cases they had to deal with just for the mental health stuff?
What tended to happen is it's a real crowded setting, and most of the people, mental health therapists, aren't used to taking the level of precautions that people in healthcare setting normally take. Mm-hmm. So, we don't take the same level of precaution that they take in a hospital or even an outpatient clinic or anything like that. So, they're just like counselors. So I guess they're not used to some of the basic levels of precaution that other people are used to. So once it got in there, it would just travel throughout a whole building. And the next thing you knew, you had 50 people in one building infected. So, it ended up being a hassle for them. And I'm just glad I missed out on the whole thing.
Yeah, right. What you said, you went out on the 21st of 2019, December 21st?
I went out on the last day of 2019 and it was the middle of winter. So, I was kind of putting it off for a few months to get started on, my official enjoying retirement. And by the time I was ready to start enjoying retirement, people were starting to, kind of whisper about what was going on, and things started to get shut down and closed down. And so I just stayed home and wrote the whole time.
Yeah. How many books did you get done?
The last couple of years where I've been working full time, I was lucky to get 2 or 3 done a year, but I've been able to consistently get 5 or 6 done a year since I retired. So it's really helped with my output.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been good.
How much time goes into writing one of your books, would you say?
I keep the same hours that I used to keep. I used to get up 5:30 in the morning. I still get up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, and I'm usually writing by about 7 o'clock. And I do the writing side instead of the business side. I do the actual keyboard writing up until about 1 or 2 o'clock. And then come 1 or 2 o'clock, I start on the business side of it. But if I get that many hours in a day, I can write a book in about 6 weeks.
Damn.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. So, hey, Dale texted me while you and I were talking. He told me to stop asking you questions right now.
I want to.
So he can.
I want to restart the show just for the podcast, so we actually have an intro, and I don't have to try to chop everything together, or just start it out. But yeah, I just want to restart everything, and then you guys can chat away. I don't care. But hey there, everyone. Welcome to the show. Tonight we've got a fantastic guest on with us. I've had Franklin on my Survivalist Prepper podcast a while back when he was working on the Borrowed World series. I was a fantastic guest, a lot of fun to talk to. A lot of you probably already know who he is, and those of you that don't, you're in for a treat. It's going to be a fun show. One of the best preparedness prepping authors out there, I would say top 5, and it really depends on your cup of tea. I mean, there's some really good ones, but in my opinion, I think I said it last week, he's my favorite author. And that's not just because you're here. I'm not kissing your ass just because you're here. It's the truth. I say it to everyone. So, but anyway, Franklin, say hello to everyone. Let them know what you're up to, the thousands of books you have, and all that stuff.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on here. I've enjoyed speaking with both of you in the past. As I was telling you before the show started, I've kind of taken a hiatus from doing podcasts, and I haven't been on any podcasts in about 1.5 years. But when you sent me a message and wanted to talk, I was really excited about it. And I appreciate you saying that you enjoyed my books. The Borrowed World series was my first series. I released that in 2015. Now I'm getting ready to come out with the 9th book in the series. That's coming out this fall. Since that time, I've done the Borrowed World series, the Locker 9 series, the Mad Mick series. I've got a thriller series called the Ty Stone series, and I have a new book, a new series that's got 2 books in it that takes place in Idaho, called The Way of Dan. So I've got 23 or 24 books out now, 2 more in the works. So I've been busy.
Yeah, no kidding. And also with the chat, for some reason, this is just one of those nights, but I can't get into the chat. So if anybody's got any questions and all that, I just apologize. We're not ignoring you, just can't get in there. So, with that though, we're just going to kind of roll with it. But yeah, you've got, when I first talked to you on our podcast, I think you were on book 4 of the Borrowed World series, and fantastic series too. Still one of my favorites. And we were talking about that book series. Since then, you've got like 80 more books. You've got, you're working on the Mad Mick series, and book 6 it's wrapping it up, right? Is that the final book in the series?
I don't think so. The thing that happens in this next Mad Mick book that readers have asked for a long time is the Borrowed World series, the Mad Mick series, and the Locker 9 series all take place in the same geographic area. in this book, the Borrowed World and the Mad Mick world are kind of get closer together, and those characters are going to interact with each other for the first time. And that's something readers have really wanted to see happen. So I don't think it's going to be the last one, because people are just so attached to that series. The Mad Mick is not as much of a prepper series as the Borrowed World is. Yeah. So, it's a different kind of thing, but it's still really popular and takes place in that same world. So, Borrowed World, Locker 9, and Mad Mick are all in the same event and the same region of the country.
Yeah, and I kind of noticed that. I was listening to your latest book 5, and it's not for the faint of heart, I guess I'll say it like that. It gets sort of graphic at times, and that's kind of why I played that little montage in the beginning with all that dystopian movies and all that, because that's what kind of the feel I got from that one. Whereas the Borrowed World was almost, and I've got a couple questions for you on that too, but it was almost a blueprint, I suppose, of getting home and all of that stuff. With that Borrowed World series, was that based on a lot of, it seems like it was based on sort of not your personal situation or what you would do, but was there a lot of that went into that series of because you're the real deal when it comes to this dystopian fiction. You were an actual prepper. So was there a lot of that went into, okay, this is what I would do, or this is what I hope my family would do while I was not around?
Yeah. It's kind of funny, because when nobody knows you, when you haven't released a book yet, there's no expectation, so you can kind of do what you want. So I didn't anticipate that anybody would ever read the Borrowed World, so I wrote the book about my life, my job, my coworkers, my preparations, my friends, my family. It was just all based on real life stuff for me. I had a job where I had to go to Richmond, Virginia twice a month, which was about, 350 miles or so from home. And I was always paranoid in the post 9/11 world of getting up there and something crazy happened that could impact my ability to get home. So I wrote that book about imagining a worst case scenario of getting stuck up there. I didn't want to do an EMP book, because there are already several good EMP books out there. And I didn't want to, cross over with those. So I decided to set up my own collapse scenario, which was a terror attack that led to a cascading systems failure where, there were inevitable fuel restrictions and the power went out and they lost communication and everything. So these guys were trying to get home. But one of the gaps that I'd found was a lot of books talked about the journey home, but they didn't talk about what was going on at home while one half of the family was still on the road. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to write a book that jumped back and forth between the road and the family and told both those stories. And it's kind of taken off now to create this bigger story of not just the nuts and bolts level preparedness and survival, but about the mental aspects and the stress and the emotions of a long-term disaster. And I think we're seeing a lot of that play out now. So for me, that has been one aspect of the books that I'm seeing in real life now, is that stress level from long-term disaster.
Yeah. Is there anything in the books now that you see society being more pressure tested that you got wrong or that you got right, that you were kind of like,
Well, I guess like a lot of folks, we never blew up the whole toilet paper aspect in the books, although I will say preppers have always seen the value of that and have had, redundant systems to, manage that. But I think that the stress and the wanting somebody to blame was something that I kind of anticipated in the books, but I maybe didn't represent adequately, because I think humans feel better when they can blame when they can see the cause of something. And when you have an event like anything, whether it's a terror attack or a pandemic or whatever, people want to get to the root of it. But in some cases you can't, whether it's a lack of information or a lack of transparency or whatever. There are certain things that you cannot get to the bottom of. And when you can't, I think it enhances the frustration that people feel. So I think that I didn't understand fully when I wrote those books just how angry people would be at not knowing what was going on behind the scenes. But I think a lot of the other aspects were true. I think that one thing I didn't anticipate was where the divisions would be. I thought that there would be conflict between prepared people and less prepared people. And there would be conflict between people who wanted to loot and steal versus people who were prepared.
Right.
But I didn't anticipate the level of divisiveness that we have now. You know, that's just gone crazy. And I think it's enhanced by the pandemic and the frustration at just everything that's going on.
Yeah. It's kind of a pretty high level where, and we're still functioning every day. It's not like society's melted down or anything like that. And the people are at high RPMs all day long now.
Yeah. And, you know, like something that I saw or have seen over the past year is there are just so many people in these real states of crisis right now, completely paralyzed by the things that are going on. And, you know, even with some of what we're going through right now, we still are in a generally a much better living condition than a lot of the world. Sure. But there are people who are absolutely paralyzed by what has taken place, whether it's the fear of going outside or the frustration at, you know, the government or whatever. There are people who are just completely paralyzed by this. And I guess I didn't anticipate that either.
Yeah. To like what you mean, to like the extent that it's happening, or?
Yeah, that there would be just so many people who were in utter meltdown. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are fairly anxious people anyway. And, you know, the level of anxiety has just shot through the roof with some of these people, and they've been unable, you know, I know a lot of people that have just been unable to go on with their lives during this last year. And, you know, I think if anything, and this is something that, you know, I think I've tried to reflect more in my later books, is even in a disaster, you know, even in a survival preparedness situation, people have to find a way to be happy and to thrive and to get satisfaction and enjoyment out of life, or, you know, there's just no purpose in going on. And I think a lot of people, even, you know, with whatever this crisis is at its root, you know, with whatever this pandemic really is, there are people who are just paralyzed by it and have lost the ability to enjoy their lives. And, you know, that's a rough spot to be in.
Yeah, I think it kind of shows people's dependency on like government and systems and stuff like that. Their dependency on status quo, where if anything veers from the norm, their everyday life, they just kind of, it's that they're blaming other people, or they're trying to figure out how to get back to normal. They just can't handle outside of their normal box. Whereas in preparedness, that's kind of what we plan for or try to adjust to, is that when it does get outside of normal, everything's all good now, but when it does get outside of normal, how do we react to that? And being paralyzed is, or not understanding or not even thinking about this stuff, is definitely not the way to go. And unfortunately, it's a lot of people.
When I'm talking to people who are not preppers, and I'm talking about what prepping is, or, you know, what preppers do, or, you know, what prepping is about, I think that adaptability is probably the key skill. I mean, there's lots of gear and there's lots of things that we we benefit from having. But that flexibility and adaptability as part of your mindset is the key survival tool. That's what separates. There are survival situations we've seen time after time where a less prepared person or a less strong person has gone on to survive when somebody who was stronger and more skilled died. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's that flexibility and adaptability that pushed them to the top.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking about that the other week, the adaptability and the mental strength to get through all this different stuff.
Well, I think you have to have the mental ability to understand that, hey, a lot of people have been in a kind of a crisis mode for the last year and a half with everything that's gone on, from the election to the summer riots to the coronavirus and just one thing after another. And people have to, like you said, Franklin, you have to be happy. You have to understand that even in the midst of really intense stuff, you can throttle down for a little bit, like pull back out of it, just take a break on the news for a while or whatever that is, and go off and have actual enjoyment, not enjoyment that comes from hitting the enter button after, putting the last exclamation on a response to somebody on Facebook. But go out in nature and hang out and, go by a creek and enjoy nature and enjoy just good things that make you feel good down to the bone, and get out of that stuff. And it'll help you out a lot, I think.
Yeah. I think that's critical because, I've been really frustrated with watching how people have been so immersed in social media, because you never win an argument on the internet. It's an insurmountable task. You cannot win arguing with somebody on the internet. You both lose. I think that people would benefit a lot from doing the things you're saying. Just find some way to enjoy your day. If you're going to be on the internet anyway, if you're glued to your desk and you have to find some way at your desk to break up time, listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video. But limit your social media time, because, the other side of this, which I've been really frustrated with, is, so many of the memes and tweets that you see now are intentionally psychological operations from other countries. You look them up and they're tweets that did not originate from the person they're attributed to. And I think that we as preppers need to be a little more critical in what we read. And when we see, things that are being shared over and over again, and when we see tweets and when we see memes, we need to ask ourselves, is this authentic? Should I spend a little more time trying to find out if this is real or not before I become angry at it and before I share it, to all my people, because a lot of times it's fake. And, we know for a fact, and I'm sure this as well as I do, that, Iran, Russia, China have entire divisions devoted to sitting and producing memes and other psychological operations material that goes out every day. And all this is designed to increase the division, because they know that if we're all fighting with each other, we can't be watching them. And, if I have a goal for the next year, it's to minimize how much of that divisiveness I'm involved in, because I think it's intentional misdirection. We need to be watching the ball instead of fighting with each other.
Well, it's interesting. If you get on YouTube and you go look up RT, right? And it's a news source, right? Or it's a media source, and it stands for Russia TV, and it's run by the Russian government, right? And you go on there, look at the articles or the videos, and look at their headlines, and they're going all for emotion on this stuff. And and when you look at it from the perspective of that they're not there to bring you news. They're there for the Russian government's purposes of getting you fired up and pissed off and all this other stuff. And that's what the purpose of RT is. Right. And so you see this stuff and go look around and see how much, like you talked about, Franklin, the psyops that's going on. Look at how much we're being bombarded by propaganda from different countries, from within our own country all day long. It's crazy.
I see something from RT and I completely just pass it up because it's like, no, I don't need any Russian information. I don't care what they have to say. Yeah. I think a lot of that, I think we're getting better as a human race with all this kind of stuff because all of this stuff, this stuff has happened so fast, all the internet and these capabilities and our brains just haven't kind of caught up with how to decipher all this information. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. Brian's more of the mental side of this than me, but I think we're getting there.
I don't think we're getting any better at it, man. I think we're on the downhill roller coaster right now. We better figure it out, and hopefully there's a little turn down there at the end that heads back up, because right now we're not batting so well on getting stuff straight. I mean, it's like we're ripping each other apart about everything now. It seems like.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on this, Brian. I think that that people are not being discriminating enough, and I think that whenever you see a meme that immediately makes you angry, you should assume that somewhere there is a Chinese hacker who has produced that, who is laughing hysterically, saying, I know this is going to piss somebody off just so bad. Oh, yeah. And, you're giving him the satisfaction when you get all riled up about it. And, we're under enough stress anyway. Don't get stressed over this stuff that is more than likely fake anyway.
Yeah.
Hey,
everybody in the chat, I did finally get it to where I can see your comments. I just can't comment. But if you have any questions for Franklin, I'll try to read through those and we'll ask them here on the show. But just so you know, I can actually see them now. Into the Wilderness got all sorts of comments, but I'm probably, unless it's a question, I'll just let those be what they are. But Franklin, I wanted your thoughts on during this whole pandemic thing. I like when we have people on here to get different perspectives on how they handle things, what they thought were going right, what they could have done better, all of that. With you being a semi-public kind of, you don't make any bones about being a prepper and all that, kind of like us here. I'm sure you had lots of people saying, "Hey, what do I do now? I've got a whole bunch of toilet paper, but I don't know what else to do." Did you get a lot of that in the beginning stages of all this stuff going on?
Yeah. One thing I'd like to say about that specifically is I grew up with pandemic phobia because my grandfather had 11 brothers and sisters, and they grew up during the Spanish flu. And when the Spanish flu hit West Virginia, where they lived, he lost his dad, and he lost 5 of his siblings. And he was 7 years old at the time. And I heard stories growing up about how they had to drag his dad to the front of the house and pull him into a bedroom after he had passed away because it was February and they couldn't bury the bodies. So his mother was still sick in bed. Him and his siblings, as their brothers and sisters died, had to take them to the front room and also lay them out. And what eventually happened in this little town is, since they couldn't bury the bodies because the ground was frozen, they ended up stacking them in boxcars in the center of town. And so the entire community worked together to go to each house and get the bodies, put them in the boxcars and stack them into the ground had thawed out enough to do the burials. So when you grow up hearing this, pandemics become very real to you. So pandemic preparation had always been a big thing for us. We always had masks, we had hand sanitizer, we had things specifically put back just in case of pandemic, because of growing up hearing these horror stories. When you're like 5 years old hearing this stuff, it makes an impression. So anyway, it was interesting in the beginning of this because, nobody really knew what was going on there in the very early stages. But as it began to clarify that this was going to be a significant event, I did start to get phone calls from other writers who'd say, "Look, I know you're one of those prepper people, what do I need to be doing?" So, in some cases it was too late, because some of the things that they needed they didn't have the ability to get anymore. I heard from a lot of readers too. I heard from people that I used to work with saying, I always thought you were crazy before, but now can you tell me some more about, some of this stuff? Where do you get those fish antibiotics at again? Things like that.
Yeah.
But the good thing I felt a lot of satisfaction in is readers seem to be ahead of the curve. I heard from readers as time went on about feeling like that reading the books and kind of getting an idea about how hysteria occurs and how rushes on the stores occur, that they kind of knew what to look for and what to buy. And even though they were going into a big unknown event, there was a sense of comfort in feeling like you were better prepared because of something you had read and advanced preparations you had made.
Mm-hmm. I always think it's pretty cool with the prepper fiction that, you kind of get down to it, and ultimately it's something causes this major, like you said, like a cascading event of, cataclysm that happens across the board and everybody ends up sort of a free for all. It's kind of the general outline. But the thing that I think when people read y'all's books, yours, Chris Weathersman, Steve, Lisa, your whole DD, was it 13 group now or DD 12 group?
Yeah.
It's somewhat the same topic, but it's discussed from different perspectives in different geographic locations. And so all your perspectives come in there about how you would deal with stuff. And they're usually relatively easy books to read. They're fun. And just by reading those books, if people pay attention, you can pick up a lot of different ideas on how to approach your preparedness. Just because, I think it's you guys doing it across the board makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I think the books really help you on is they throw out a lot of scenarios and they allow you to examine that scenario with your level of preparation and your values and your training and your skills, and look at how you would handle that situation. Because a lot of it in the books, you face a lot of moral dilemmas, sharing food, whether a person should be killed or whether they should be allowed to live. Those are all things you face in these books. And, not that those are scenarios you may ever face, but I think it's a good exercise for you to mentally prepare yourself. And that's one thing the books do, is they walk you through a lot of scenarios and allow you to look, well, I live in a different area than the guy in the book, but that could still happen to me.
Yeah. Hey, Robert in the chat had a question for you, Franklin. He said, as a mental health professional, what do you think the long-term effects of social isolation young kids are dealing with due to the pandemic are going to be?
Well,
that's a very
first
good question.
I'll say that I wasn't a counselor. I worked in mental health for 28 years. And for a lot of those years, I worked with kids in the school system. But I wasn't a counselor. So this is my opinion, for what it's worth. I see that already it affects how kids feel about long-term goals and about delayed gratification. I think that these kids, like, my son didn't get to graduate high school. They missed their prom. They missed a lot of those things because he was a senior during the pandemic. So I think that a lot of these kids will grow up thinking, well, I'm not going to delay things because who knows if I'll ever get to that point. If I want to do something, I need to do that thing now because I know that I can now. There could be a lockdown, there could be a shortage, there could be something else happen. And like where I live, as you may be able to tell from my internet connection, I live in a remote Appalachian area. Only about 20% of our county has internet. Yeah. So when you say that kids are going to stay at home and they're going to learn remotely, it's not even a matter of whether they have a computer or not. There's no cell coverage at a lot of these homes. We have about 40% cell coverage where I live and about 20% internet coverage. So you've had a lot of kids who had no education for a year. So, that's going to have an impact too. There's a a meme about, we're going to have a whole generation of kids educated by unemployed day drinkers. And, to some extent, that's kind of true. You have kids who have goofed off for a year. And how is that going to, education is one of those things that, it's easier when you keep at it. And if you miss a year, what is that going to do long term? Yeah.
And I think it's a symptom in society in general with not having that personal contact with everybody. Everybody's on the internet. I think that has a lot to do with why everybody's tensions are so high and people are willing to say and do things that they wouldn't say on a normal basis. And when you get, the kids kind of geared towards that, I think they need that personal interaction with other people is what I'm saying. But at the same time, how do you balance that in a situation like this? It's a tough situation. It's basically how, you go with your gut as a parent and do what you think you need to do. But I would do my best to try to get that interaction with other people, because I think kids with their brains developing and all that stuff need that, I think.
Yeah, and that's been one of those situations that is almost individual to every single child and parent and family, because it depends on what kind of area you live in, what socialization opportunities you have in your neighborhood. Like, we don't live in a neighborhood. We live way out in the country. I don't have any homes within sight. So if you want socialization, you have to go to it, and it's that way for a lot of the kids that live in this area. They live way out, and if they want to socialize, they have to go to town or go to a neighbor's house.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something, you mentioned, like with your family with the Spanish flu. And I've heard other stories about that. There was one where a young boy that had a family of 8, and after the first wave, they made it okay. And the second wave came through, and he was the only one left of his family of 8 after the Spanish flu came through. So I think sometimes that we let that we can let the politics of all this get in the way of how we really plan for a pandemic. Like on if a Spanish flu level pandemic comes through where you're losing 50 to 80% of families when it hits, you're going to be people are going to be isolated. What does that look like for you? What do you, how do people prepare for that? Because I think sometimes now we can get so adamant, like, oh, I'm not going to let myself get locked down. You may not want to, you may want to be self-locked down because it gets so bad out there that you want to stay away from it. When I worked in Africa and there was the local hospital, I had cases of hemorrhagic fever. I wasn't going near the local hospital. Like, it's just not happening.
Yeah. And, I've had this debate with people before, saying that exact same thing. And I think it's easily misunderstood by people, because what I've said is, in some ways, it doesn't matter whether this virus was man-made, whether it was a lab accident, or whether it naturally occurred. Our level of preparation is not affected by that. We should still be preparing, and we should still, prepare to address it, because regardless of where it came from, we still have to be prepared, and we still have to deal with the virus regardless of where it came from. And we get obsessed with the politics of it and the origin of it. And even though that's important on one level, it still doesn't affect us on the basic level of how we prepare. Because if I get the virus, that's the important thing, not how I got it or who made it or whatever. I have to deal with the fact I got it.
Yeah. One other thing too, with the isolation, we tend to, talk about the negative aspects of all this stuff as well, but could you imagine if something like this happened 30 years ago, when there wasn't Zoom, when there wasn't the internet, when there wasn't this opportunity for learning at home and all of that stuff? I mean, it would have been, the effect on kids and people in general would have been, I think, far worse at that point, because it would have been isolation. Now, yes, it's isolation to the fact that you're in your home and you can't go outside, but you could still call grandma 3 states away or whatever and talk to people. Back then would have been a whole lot different. So there are some benefits, I guess, to, the the technology we have these days as opposed to back, talking about Spanish flu days and stuff like that, how it would have been back then.
Well, do you think back then though too that they weren't used to all this stimulation? Like, when I was growing up, I mean, I went down and played with my cousins once in a while, but I was pretty good with, hey, there's your coloring books, go get after it, and I wonder how much of we've gotten so accustomed to having this, we're on in Facebook and these different internet forums, you have these big communities that you're getting all this information from all day. Back then you got it from your newspaper and whatever, the guy said on one of your 2 or 3 channels that you had on TV.
Yeah, well, that's true because we, where I lived, we grew up with, we had television, but you could only pick up one channel, like you said. And, you had to provide your own entertainment most of the time anyway. So we didn't have an expectation that the world was there to entertain us.
I guess it's like one of the times where, where you always have the cities, a lot of times people that live in the city, like, oh, I'm kind of resilient and stuff, but it really kind of shows how non-resilient they, when you're stuck in a 1,000 or 800 square foot apartment for 6 months, like, what do you do?
Well, yeah. And, in the beginning, when things were first kind of getting crazy, we didn't leave home for 2 months and had the ability to not leave for 2 months. And then it kind of became this thing where, I'd almost like to see if I could go for, 5 months.
How long did you go?
We went about 2.5 months and didn't go anywhere.
Nice.
Yeah. And, kind of the positive aspect of that is you're getting to hang out with your family and you don't have any choice. Nobody can run off and go anywhere. They have to stay home. Yeah. And it wasn't because we were locked down. We were just being cautious. And, I work from home, my wife's home, and my kids' school was shut down. So we didn't have anywhere to be.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned a little bit earlier about how, as some of your readers and as preppers in general, it was kind of nice, that feeling of it where everybody else is kind of panicked and all their senses are heightened and all that. As preppers, we kind of got to sit back a little bit and say, oh crap, here we go. But you know what? I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. I don't have to go fight people at the grocery store. During this pandemic, I'm curious, what was something that maybe that you wished you would have had better, or was there any sort of things that you learned to do better during this? And then, some of the things that you got right as well. What were your experiences going through all of this crap?
I think we had a lot of things fairly well covered. There were, of course, some gaps. I think that, it was little food items like comfort items for the most part were the things that we didn't have put back in quantity. We had to make a few, like the first trip when we got out, we had to do a liquor store run. We had some shortages there.
You drank up all your barter supplies. Is that what everybody always says they want to get liquor? I'll barter with it. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, we drank up all our sterilization supplies. But yeah, I think there wasn't really anything that jumped out that we were short on because, I had a case of hand sanitizer that I'd bought that was military surplus from Iraq. The government paid $6.50 a bottle. I paid $50 because you know how that whole discount thing goes by the time it ends up on the civilian market. Right. But I didn't think we had any significant gaps. Now if we'd lost power and that had gone on for a long time, there would have been problems. But for the level of incident, where we were mostly staying home and just eating and watching television, we were pretty comfortable.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And I think a lot of preppers are kind of like that where, with me, there were some small holes and some stuff that is like, okay, if I need this, then, that's going to be an issue. But luckily this was almost a train. And I don't want to minimize what this pandemic was, but it was almost like a training thing for, something major, something that would shut those stores down and all of that. Because in that type of situation, and who knows what we're going to talk about this in a bit. What do we think is going to come? But in this type of situation, there was that option of going to the store if you had to, going to get the booze, drinking all your booze. In some sort of SHTF type situation, you drink all your booze, you're done unless you got a still or something. So I think it was a good learning lesson. A good lesson.
Along that line, like one of the things that we decided mid-pandemic that we needed to add another freezer to what we had. Because I live in the middle of cattle country, and probably within, a mile of my house, there's thousands of cattle. I have cattle farms on all sides of me. So, cattle come up to be butchered pretty often. So we get butchered meat regularly from neighbors. The slaughterhouse is just a couple of miles down the road, so we go pick them up down there. But, we didn't anticipate the shortage from the lockdowns in China of China-based materials. We didn't anticipate, that there would be all these people needing a new car who couldn't go get a new car because they didn't have any chips in them, and I didn't anticipate that I wouldn't be able to get a freezer when I needed one. And, as far as something that's kind of permanently affected how I prepare, I think I'm going to stay on top of appliances that might go bad and other things like that, and make sure I don't try to squeeze them to the last mile, and replace them while replacements are available.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. The whole, there's just a lot of things that as preppers, I don't know that you'll ever be completely 100% done with it, but there's a lot of things that if you just do it on a continual basis, make it a lifestyle, do what you can with it. It's a little unfair because all three of us on this show right now all live in the boonies, and not everybody can do that stuff. But at the same time, you can still do what you can do, and focus on what you can control, like we talked about in the beginning, and then just grow gradually as you can. And then when something does happen, you just kind of have to cross your fingers and hope you've got enough boxes checked off to to be able to withstand a little while.
Yeah, you know what the opposite of preparedness is?
What's that?
Procrastination, man. I mean, that's literally, if you procrastinate, you're not, if you can get some stuff done, like you did have a freezer and stuff, you didn't get that second freezer, but I think it's more of, you see those things, identify those things that you need, getting ahead of it and figuring out a way to make it to happen in a reasonable time frame is probably a good idea.
Yeah. And as I tell people all the time, who are non-preppers, it's not about paranoia, it's about reassurance and peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the comfort of knowing that you can handle bumps in the road, because I think there's a big misconception that it's based in paranoia, but I think that's extremely off base. Prepping is not about paranoia. It's about, just because, where you guys, we talked about, living in rural areas, but, that's where I came into prepping from. Is I lived in a place where, people generally were subsistence farmers a couple of generations back. So, being able to get by without stores and without the government's intervention has been a lifestyle here for a long time. And I'm certainly not a subsistence farmer or anything like that, but I have the feeling that you should be able to take care of yourself and not have to worry about the government to come in and rescue you, because, the odds of that are pretty slim.
Yeah. I think too, it's, I wonder how many people are now, because a lot of the paranoia, when people label preppers as paranoid and all that stuff, I think that's some of that still coming out of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, like where it was a lot of the government conspiracy. Like, why would you prepare? The government will take care of you. Government, and all these conspiracy things and all that. And we've gotten to the point now where we've seen it repeatedly fail to live up to what our expectations of what the government, how they should be able to do things. And then, like, no, you're on your own. Plan on being on your own.
Well, yeah, and I think that one big lesson that we kind of lost track of because of the pandemic was this unseasonable weather that occurred in Texas.
Mhm.
Because I was really shocked at seeing how many people did not have any system of backup heat. You think of all these
Mhm.
homes that had all their plumbing freeze where, a kerosene heater and 2 jugs of kerosene would have kept that from happening, or people that, in that same situation that didn't have any alternative means for cooking food or for, any backup water. And I was really shocked at the
Right.
extent of that. And that kind of got overshadowed by the whole pandemic, but that was a really eye-opening event to me.
Yeah, during that pandemic, I did notice there was a big uptick in the attention that preparedness was getting, and more of I guess, people being more accepting of it. I'm sure you saw, book sales and questions and all that stuff go up, but it seems to me like it pretty short lived, I suppose. Whereas when you're a prepper, you kind of think about this stuff as just necessities. But these other people that were getting into it, and I think it was fantastic. And there's probably still some people that did stick around and are still doing the stuff because they see that there's still a whole lot that could happen in the future. But I do see a lot of people that just kind of went back to that normal way of, this is how life goes, and I'll wait, and if I have to do it again and freak out again, I guess that's what I'll have to do. But yeah, I've seen a lot of that. Did you see an uptick like I kind of did with the website? Did you see an uptick with people asking questions in your books and all that?
Yeah. I wasn't sure in the early stages of the pandemic how that would go, because I was afraid that people might have a fatigue with, I'm living this, so I don't necessarily want to read about it. But that wasn't the case. The sales were really strong, and a lot of it was people who were new to prepper fiction, people who may not be from the same political affiliation, or just people from all over. And it was a combination of things. I think it wasn't just the pandemic, but it was the riots and the societal unrest and just the whole stew of events that really just ignited some people. And like you said, there's people who have bought things that they will never open and never learn to use. But there are probably a lot of people out there who, for the first time, are really taking this seriously, based on the fact that some of them are moving, and relocating to other parts of the country, because, you're getting serious about changing things when you actually pick up and move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole lot and Brian and I have talked about this a few times. It seems like, from when I first talked to you, we had talked about preparedness, and there's always been this heightened sense of urgency, but nothing like it seems like there is now. And I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on I don't want you to rank anything or tell me what I'm not going to be doomsday preppers and say, what are you preparing for? But what do you kind of see coming down the pipe? What are some of your main concerns with the way this stuff's going? I mean, government, the economy. I mean, it seems like we could get hit from any direction.
Yeah, it's just hard to predict at this point because, I think a good example is, in the midst of all this, we had this unprecedented level of UFO disclosures, and nobody even cared, because the whole world is on fire at this point. So what does it matter that we have UFOs?
Brian cared.
I cared too, Brian. But
that's all we need. We don't need the little green guys right now, man. We got enough stuff going on.
Yeah, any other time that would have been big news. But I think we have to be watching all fronts. I was just reading this book called Days of Rage by this guy, Brian Burrow. And it came out maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And it's about the 70s radicals. And it's really interesting. And I got interested in this book because I was thinking, there's not a lot of difference between some of the things that are happening now and some of the things that happened in the 70s. And then when I started researching this, it talked about how in the second half of 1971 through the end of 1972, there were 3,000 bombings in the United States. And that's lost information, basically. I mean, that's not something that's taught in school. It's not something that's widespread information. In the 70s, in the early 70s, New York City averaged 300 bomb threats a day, to the point that a lot of people didn't even evacuate buildings anymore. Yeah. And, this may have been in the past, but the way that this impacts us now is like, this thing we're having in San Francisco and San Diego and some of these other cities where they're not prosecuting people for thefts under a certain amount. Well, the district attorney in San Francisco, her parents were weather underground bombers. So the lingering effects of these 1970s radicals continue to exist and continue to impact us. So I think that, extremist violence is still on my radar because it could impact where we travel. It could impact work. It can impact, it's already impacted a lot of these urban communities that are no longer going to have drugstores and no longer going to have grocery stores because the national chains that own them are shutting them down and pulling them out. So I think that's on our radar. And one thing that also kind of goes along with that is I listen a lot to this Ed Calderon, who has an Instagram account, Ed Manifesto, that talks a lot about cartel violence. And one of the things he talks about is how, with law enforcement distracted during, this period of unrest and during the pandemic, the cartel growth has just been unrivaled. And cities like Seattle, cities like Chicago, the spread of the cartel to street level violence and drug dealing we've not been paying attention to it because we've been looking other places. But, that level of crime is something to be concerned about. Yeah. And as I said earlier, too, the shortages related, because, China's getting ready to go in another period of locking down now. And that impacts us in a lot of ways as far as the supplies that we need. So I think that, like I said earlier, people should be, not just saying, oh, I can go out any day of this week and buy a new washer if I need one. I was getting to the point that I needed a new washing machine, and I went and bought one last week thinking, well, I better get one while they're available. And the store that I bought it from, the guy said, yeah, we're already starting to see shortages now. They're pushing the delivery days out farther and farther and farther. Yep. So, we can't put those things off the way we used to. And, it's kind of the same for your own personal health. I think people need to be doing the same thing there. If you've got things that you need done, don't be putting them off forever, because there could be surges that result in hospitals pushing off elective procedures, Yep. So I think all those things, but China, lockdowns, pandemic, after effects, and economic after effects of the pandemic are all things. There's just a lot to be concerned about now because, like I said a minute ago, the world is basically on fire at this moment.
Well, and literally, like when you talk about the fire, have you guys been watching the fires that are going on? And I'm not just talking California, British Columbia. There's over 5,000 square miles. That was yesterday. It might be more now. I think it's more of Siberia is burning. Turkey's burning, Greece is burning, all these countries, and they're like, like in Turkey, they're like, it's rolling over power plants, and they're like, well, now people are going to be without power. It's look at California with the fires and all that. It's these cascading effects, and there's so much stuff going on right now. It's like, if now wasn't enough to convince somebody to pay attention to their preparedness, I don't know what it's going to take, man. Maybe Godzilla coming up or something.
Yeah. Yeah, you can smell the fire, the California fires here in Colorado. It's nowhere near as bad as is out there, I'm sure, but you can smell them out here. Lisa and I were having a conversation today too, and I have to research this. This was literally like an hour ago, but she was talking about how there was some sort of minor EMP or solar flare or something that actually affected, nothing large scale or anything, but it's something that shouldn't have, because our magnetic field is so weak, it's something that shouldn't have affected things, but it did, which is pretty concerning that, if something were to be, strong enough the way we think about it, how catastrophic would something like that be, or something weaker that did a lot more damage than we think about too as well. So that's just one more thing to throw on your plate of, I'm going to start digging my bunker now.
I want my bunker, man. But I think people need to look at stuff more in micro movements, right? We tend to look at stuff like these disasters and like, oh, what's our prepper apocalypse event of choice? Like this major thing that shuts the earth down right away. Yeah, we could be the frog in boiling water. Just all this stuff keeps turning up. And, there was, when you look at it they recently had a species in, I guess it's over in Siberia too, because Siberia is warming up to the point where the tundra now they're having a lot of problems with the tundra up there, and that's where they're getting these fires. But they had some species of sort of animal up there, like a horse or some shit, and the whole species up and died because I guess there's something in their gut because it's been so cold up there for so long that it's kept their this bacteria dead, and now that thing came alive and it wiped out the whole species. And I'm sitting here looking at it, we don't have to worry about COVID maybe, but what happens is we go about this stuff and some other bacteria comes up that we need to, that shuts things down. I think there's just so much out there right now that I don't know, it's pretty crazy times, man.
Yeah. Maybe there's one of those a UFO. This is where Lisa would come in handy on the show. Maybe there's a UFO frozen under the ice, and then that's gonna come. And we're all screwed there too.
Would it shock you right now if all of a sudden they cut into like some news feed and they showed some spaceship coming up out of like the Antarctic ice cap and with tentacles and like, oh, we're here to eat everybody? Like that really wouldn't surprise me.
What would shock me is if people didn't start bitching and screaming, saying that alien better be wearing a mask.
Yeah. What gender is that alien?
Yeah. But no, nothing would surprise me at this point with everything that's going on. But, and Into the Wilderness said it in the chat earlier, you got to have fun with this. It's not all, it is a very serious subject, but if you are going to, you got to have fun with it, and you've got to just make sure you're prepared. Preparedness, like Franklin was talking about earlier too, it's not about the hysteria and all of that stuff. It's about gaining that confidence to be, to know that you're going to be able to handle a situation. So, if you have that confidence to kind of have fun with it and go, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I can only do what I can do. So I'm going to do what I can and cross our fingers. And honestly, who knows? I mean, you've got the next pandemic, regardless what you think about the variants and the political theater and all that crap. Something could happen. The lockdowns could happen, whether you agree with them or not. And what is that going to cause? So a lot of stuff to be thinking about, and a lot of
I'd always been one of those people that thought that what was going to get us was a slow decline, that the economy would start grinding down and this would start happening. But I believed it was going to be slow. But now I believe it's all going to happen at once. Like you said, it's just going to be so many things, and every system is going to be overwhelmed, and we're just going to run out of options.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I hate to say, I don't think a Mad Max type situation is very feasible, but I do think reverting back, 20, 30, 40, 50, pick your number, whatever years, maybe even 100 years, isn't out of the question as well, because we may have some of this technology and all of that, but if you have the shortages, if you have the, you're not able to get the things that you need to get, you may be reverting back to figuring out how to, keep your meat cool, how to get meat in the first place, and then figuring out how to keep your meat cool and all that. Fuel, you may be, the wood burning and all that with the gasifier, stuff like that may be things that people need to learn. And I think with that type of situation, what we were talking about earlier with people just having this dependency and not doing things for themselves, there's going to be a lot of people that can't do that or don't have not just the willingness, I guess, to go that route and do those things because they just want stuff handed to them. And if you're not willing to do that stuff and adjust course, it could be pretty rough.
Well, and it's we always, it's something that I think we in the prepper community always bash on people like, don't plan on the government. But literally, if you look at the numbers of the government, like there's in the United States, there's about just over 1 million, 1.1 give or take million firefighters. There's about 800,000 sworn law enforcement. Then you get into the military, we're looking at about another million people. Throw everybody else on there. We got about 4 million people that would be government to come help. We got 330 some million people, closing on 340 million people in the country. That those numbers just don't equate. 4 million people are going to go help out the rest of us, 320 million people. It's not, it's those numbers don't work. And so if you're someone that's sitting back going, what am I going to do? And I know no one watching this is one of those people. You're going to be in for probably a really, it could be in for a really bad time if this thing keeps going the way it's going.
Yeah.
Well, and all you have to do is look as far back as Katrina and see, how quickly the government got to those people, which was not very quickly at all. That was a very impactful event to me as far as travel goes, because, I looked at those people who were down in New Orleans on business, who got stuck in the Superdome with their briefcase and their luggage going, what am I doing here? How am I going to get out of the city? And so I decided I never wanted to be one of those people when I traveled. So I always started traveling with my backpacking gear after that. But, that was a perfect example of, you just couldn't get to everybody. And that's how it'll be. And I think that a lot of times in conspiracy theories, people attribute more power to the government than they've really got. One of the things that you see in my books a lot is government is always competing factions who are at war with each other. They're always trying to one up each other. This agency is trying to overpower this agency. They're all withholding information from each other, and nobody is working as a collective single force. So, government is not as organized and all powerful as a lot of people think. It's a conglomeration of people, all who have personal goals, and they're all trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
And when I worked for the federal government, when I worked for State Department, and I was a contractor working for some companies for State Department in DC. My experience was some of the good employees stuck around and rose up and went to the top, but a lot of the good employees or well-performing government people would get poached and go out to work in the private sector. And like the mid and lower levels, a lot of them were bozos in the federal government. Like they just, it just wasn't. When I see this stuff where everybody assigns it like there's some, ultimate mastermind that goes on in all these government agencies, I'm like, there might be at the top, there might be some concerted efforts where people are grinding axes and doing that. But by and large, a lot of these people couldn't pour piss out of a boot with instructions were on the heel, man. And the coordination that it would take, I still don't see it in a lot of ways, but we can see that a little group of people can have a big impact.
Yeah.
Well, government is set up to reward mediocrity. They don't reward the real underperformers, but they don't reward the overachievers either, because that kind of ambition makes everybody else nervous. So it's like the union where, they don't want the guys to work so hard that they show everybody else up. They kind of want this row down the middle that you don't stray out of. And that's what government is to me. It's a conglomeration of mediocre people who don't want to go out on a limb. They don't want to do anything too bold. And the solution for everything is just to throw a little money at it. But I don't think they're capable of a whole lot, and they're certainly not capable of rescuing all of us.
Yeah.
No.
Kind of on this, since we're talking about government and all of that stuff, one last thing on this subject: where do you see us financially in the coming years or whatever? Brian and I have talked about this before, where they're just printing money at a just faster and faster rate than we've ever freaking seen. I could see, and this is my personal conspiracy theory, I could see that they know where this stuff is headed, and they know we're headed over a cliff trying to change the monetary system so they could give a crap how much money they spend right now. I mean, who knows? But that could have a big effect. Those secondary and tertiary disaster type situations, people pissed off. Where do you see, as far as our monetary system, where do you see that heading, or what are some of your concerns with that going into the next, 5-10 years or so?
Well, I thought it was really interesting that I guess, like within the last 2 weeks, Joe Manchin was at an event with other Democrats, and he mentioned the budget deficit, and they all booed him. And this was just in a meeting among Democrats, and he had the nerve, the audacity to use the word budget deficit. And that shows you how far removed it is from any talk of what they want to do, expense wise and policy wise. They just want to spend money. And I think that even if they don't succeed in formally changing the money system, the theory, the monetary theory behind it has already changed, because a lot of the people coming in, are not concerned at all with the idea of there being a budget deficit. They don't care. It doesn't impact at all how they spend money. And, of course, a lot of them are probably like that in their personal lives, that they live off credit cards. So they don't see free money as being anything different at the government level than at the personal level. But I think that what that's going to do is it's eventually going to push us into the digital currency spectrum, because then they can manufacture money, because there won't be any basis for it.
Have you read up on the modern monetary theory?
Just enough to be dangerous. I mean, I'm not skilled, but I know the basics.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what they did, right? They're doing. Yeah, they created this modern theory. And hey, everybody, we got a few videos on. Go check them out. Yeah. They created a monetary theory in 2008 to say that it's okay to run huge deficits and to spend money, and that's what they're doing. And they have no problem. I think, what were they doing? Like another $1 trillion plan that they have coming up, that they're just printing cash. And I guess my problem with it all too is that it's all this cash is going up to the top end of the system. If you're going to spread money around, there's people that are really hurting. Do something with it. But you have all these. I was looking at something last week, and it's like the amount of money that the top people in the society have made from all these government bailouts is just phenomenal, and it's not trickling down. And I think that's where you see a lot of the people that, like we talked about at the beginning, where you're talking about happiness, where you have so many people that are just saying, I don't think I'm going to go back into work anymore.
Yeah. Another aspect of all of this stuff too, the digital currency, is that the tracking aspect of it. They are going to have control or the ability to control what you have, your access to it. Right now, at least there's some separation, or maybe it's just perceived separation, where you have a bank and then you have the government, and they actually have to pull some strings to get a hold of your money. But if that happens, they have the access to all of that stuff. They have access to information about where that money came from, and I mean, it just opens up this whole can of worms. And maybe that's the direction we're going anyway, with all this tracking and all of that. But I just think the whole monetary thing getting digital and all of that, and I don't know, anytime you're given more control and more responsibility to the government, I just don't see, when has it ever been a good thing for us?
Well, it's never worked out well lately, right? I mean, look at the stuff I sent you, that link on the Saudi Arabia stuff.
Yeah. 9/11.
You got the 9/11. If anybody you want to go read a good story, they'll get you boiling. 9/11 families are pushing back on the president coming to the 9/11 memorial, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, because they haven't released the intel files from the 9/11 stuff. And now that they were supposed to, and now they're saying, well, we will redact it. 9/11 families are pissed. And what they're saying is they're not releasing the files because it shows that Saudi Arabia was complicit in the 9/11 conspiracy and facilitating the hijackers getting in and out of the country and some other stuff that they did. So, it's all the stuff that keeps happening that goes, like, I think us, the three of us, we all want to be able to trust our government, but it's like they're not doing a whole lot to build that up for us.
Well, you think about it, the amounts of money that are being thrown around, and there are pockets of money, significant amounts of money that disappear too.
Yeah.
And if you look at what their level of acceptable loss is, it's pretty interesting, because I know that there is a mayor now of a major city whose wife was awarded a certain amount of money that she could use for the homeless, and 75 million disappeared from that pocket of money, and they still can't account for it. They just don't know where it went, and they're not making any big effort to find it. And there's a lot of money that just floats around.
Yeah, we are going to do a little bit more detail about this 9/11 stuff, because that's very concerning. And for the people out there that actually do feel like the government's got your best interest at heart and all that stuff, this situation right here proves that, you need to be taking care of yourself, because they don't. It's all about the money. It's all about, how it affects them, and the big picture, and us little people don't matter one bit. But yeah, I want to go into more detail on that, because it just shows, how we're in for,
well, for as much as our politics are controlled by, or impacted anyway by China and Russia, or, some of the other people that we deal with. I read a figure not too long ago that 4 out of every $10 circulating in the American economy is a Saudi dollar. That's how big an impact. So even though they may not be a major, at least a very public political influence on our country, they are a major economic factor here. And, that buys a lot.
Well, you look at that, what was it, Khashoggi or something like that, where the Saudis offed that dude? And everybody was all over Trump about, oh, you're not doing nothing, you're not doing nothing. It wouldn't have mattered who was in that position at that point. They wouldn't have done anything, because you don't want to upset that apple cart. That's what the government does. They don't want to upset that apple cart. There's too many people getting paid, or too many people making money, whatever the situations are. They don't want that stuff. They don't want to have to deal with that stuff coming out.
The Saudis are one of the major financiers of presidential libraries in the United States. If you look at the presidential libraries and who's paid for them, and who the largest donors are to presidential foundations after a president leaves office, it's the Saudis always.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I don't trust them. I mean, I think we need government. Any society needs some sort of structure, government and all that. But they always get too big for their britches. I mean, I don't know of one government that didn't, end up going against its people, or doing shady crap, or just falling apart. I mean, that's just
they stop putting the people first, right? That's the goal. Put the people first, because you're one of the people, and they stop doing that. I mean, look at all you don't have to go far to look at it. Look at the campaign promises they all make, and then they follow through. How many Congress people, before they get into Congress, are all about term limits? Then after they get into Congress, term what's? No, they don't want to talk about that again.
Yeah.
So, no. And so I think we have, and part of the problem too is, we the people keep voting for these idiots to go back into office. Like, we literally get bought into their prom king and queen, this bullshit election process that we have, where we pick popular vote like we're getting a choice, and we keep going back to that. And so somewhere along the line, we got to, I don't know if it was, get rid of, was it the 18th Amendment that was direct elective senators and all that, but somewhere we've gone off the rails. I think. Yeah, obviously I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even when we go down this rabbit hole, and it becomes extremely frustrating, the thing that I always try to remind my readers is, you have to weigh this against your own personal happiness. If you go down this rabbit hole too deep and it impacts your life and it makes you miserable, then you have to distance yourself from it and just not obsess about it, because it's easy to go down this hole and get very frustrated at the state of things. And while you want to do what you can to impact that, you also have to enjoy your life and find a way to get satisfaction from your day-to-day existence. So, in some cases that means, be aware of all these things that are going on and the way your government, behaves, but at the same time, find a way to enjoy your life.
Well, that's the thing, right? You got to have that enjoyable life. If you don't, all your preparations, what are they for? Like, oh, I'm going to spend my life being miserable so I can get prepared to be miserable in the apocalypse, because now I got to have all my shit. Like, have some fun along the way. Go to Disneyland. I don't know. Do your thing.
Well, and that's like the basis of preparedness as well, too, is you can, like you were saying, Franklin, pay attention to all this stuff that's going on. You need to be alert to everything that's going on around you. But when push comes to shove, you're the only one, you're responsible for you. You're the only one that's going to be helping you out, you and your family and all that stuff. It's like I tell my kids driving their cars and stuff, or back when I was teaching them to drive anyway, it doesn't matter who, if it's your fault or not, when you got in an accident, you're the one that's going to have to pay the insurance. You're the one that's going to have to get on the bus because you don't have a car. You're the one that's going to have to pay to get your car fixed. So it doesn't matter if the government just completely runs shit into the ground. We're the ones that are going to be left dealing with life. So it's up to us to kind of get ready for that stuff and do exactly what we can and try to make it as easy as possible. Or that's learning gardening and just all the basic crap, That's what it is, because we can't stop them because they just continue to do whatever the hell they want. So
yeah, you can't make the government better, but you can make yourself better. Do things that improve yourself, because you'll get some satisfaction out of that, but there's not a lot you can always do to have a concrete impact on what the government's going to do, because they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. Hey, real quick before we get out of here, the beginning of this show was a little bit hectic, and I was going to ask you, in your Mad Mix series, give kind of, and I'm not sure if you did or not, because I was doing some stuff and but probably wasn't paying attention, but in your Mad Mix series, kind of give without giving too much away, a synopsis of what that book series is about. And then, and the new book is coming out on August 8th, right? Or the 20th?
20th, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mad Mix series is a little different from some of my other more prepper-oriented stuff. Now, readers who have read all my stuff will know that the Mad Mick pops up for the first time in the second Locker 9 book, Grace Under Fire. He shows up as kind of a supporting character, and he's not a prepper. He's kind of based, or at least inspired, by this friend of mine who has kind of a interesting background, because those people always make good characters. But it's about an Irish guy who comes to the United States as a kid because his dad was in some trouble back in Ireland, and he basically works as a contract assassin for the government. He does lots of little jobs as a contractor. So he has lots of supplies. He has lots of skills. He has a cover of working as a welder, and he has this welding shop out in the country, which is his compound, and it's where he lives with his daughter, who is pretty hardcore. She's pretty violent and brutal herself, but he's going back and forth during this same apocalyptic period that's that my Borrowed World series and my Locker 9 series are in, and he is alternating between at least the books alternate between his experiences there helping deal with his own community during the apocalypse, and also continuing to go on missions that the government sends him on, because, you know, it's like now no crisis goes wasted. You know, we can see now that while this pandemic is going on, there are all kinds of shifts going on in government with people jockeying for power. And the same is going on in the Mad Mix series. You know, it's the government. There are different divisions of government, all while the televisions are not working, who are taking full advantage of it and doing all the things they can do to advance themselves. So he is allied with one division of government, and they're doing their best to kind of beat down the other division. So there's a lot of different levels to that book. It's a lot of post-apocalyptic, but there is also a big military thriller crossover with that people seem to enjoy too. But that series is kind of has the potential to become my most popular series. It's given the Borrowed World a run for its money, but they've had some interaction in that series. They've bumped up against Locker 9 and bumped up against the Borrowed World, but in this next Mad Mick book coming out August 20th, those characters in the Mad Mick and those characters in the Borrowed World meet for the first time. So that's a book that readers have asked for, so that's what they're getting.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Brian.
How many people do you think went out and got storage lockers after reading your Locker 9 stuff?
You know, this is really interesting, but for years, I get pictures from people who have set up lockers. And I've had children contact me who said, my parents gave me this book and they told me they had set a locker up for me. And I meet people, and it's not a huge amount. I mean, I meet a couple of people every year who have done that. And the other thing that they take from that is not just setting up the locker, but building a network of people that you know that your child might be able to go to. And, you know, in the Locker 9 book, this kind of goes back to when I was a kid, back in the pre-cell phone days, and you would be traveling. You know, you wanted to know who you might know and have some connection to along the route in case you had car trouble. You know, oh, you got cousin so-and-so, or I've got a friend from college, or I've got old Army buddy or whatever, you know. And so that expanded in Locker 9 to become this network that this dad builds to get his daughter home from college if she has to come through during hard times. So there have been a lot of people who've done the lockers, and there have been a lot of people who've done the social networks like that. But, you know, there was even a girl who a couple of years ago did a little model, a mock-up of a Locker 9 locker as like her book report for high school when she sent me a picture.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, I think I asked this with every author that I've ever talked to, but with your Mad Mix series, I listened to half of the last book and then I stopped because I want to start from the beginning. But with the guy that does the audiobooks, Kevin Pierce, is that right?
Yes.
He does such a fantastic job. Are there any plans on doing a screenplay, or have you even thought about it? Is it something that you just rather stick with writing? I just with the Mad Mix series, it seems like such a kind of an action movie type atmosphere. I can see it, you know, being that way. And I'm just curious, have you thought about that? Have you ever been approached about that, or is it something you're not interested in?
No, it's something I'm totally interested in. And there've been a couple of little leads. I had something potentially on the Borrowed World series a couple of years ago, but it didn't materialize. And, you know, you talk about cruel. I'm on my way to work and I get a phone call from the William Morris Agency, which is one of the huge talent agencies. And they said they were representing a client who had an interest in this series of books. And then I never hear from them again. So you talk about cruelty. Yeah. But then there have been a couple of leads with the Borrowed World series, but nothing thus far with the Mad Mick. I'm totally open to it. There have been I've discussed it with a few people, but it's not to the point that it's going to happen yet. But I would like to see it happen. I'm totally open to it. I would do anything within my power to make it happen.
Yeah, I've watched some pretty terrible movies with terrible scripts and terrible acting. It's like, come on, somebody's got it. You know, even if it was a low budget movie, something Borrowed World or the Mad Meg or something, even if it was low budget,
Wait, what are you
I'd
saying
still
that he only gets a low budget movie?
No, I'm saying even if it wasn't some sort of Hollywood blockbuster.
That's a fine how do you do?
Well,
yeah, hey, I hope you get that B movie over there.
At least he's got a good story. I can watch a terrible movie if it's got a good storyline, or a movie with terrible acting if it's got a good story. But if it's both, it's like, oh man, I just wasted 2 hours of my life.
Well, you know, in the Mad Mick, when I was writing it, I had this. It plays in my head like a movie, the Mad Mick does. And I constantly try to keep that momentum up. And I don't do that in some of the other series, because in the Borrowed World, there's a lot of times that the guy stops to think about what's going on and to process the emotions of what's going on. But the Mad Mick doesn't really have any emotions about anything. He's a happy-go-lucky guy who, you know, he does a lot of things, and he doesn't really worry about them very much. He's kind of cool with it.
The John Wick type dude.
Very much so. And it comes from this background that he has of growing up with a dad and a grandfather who were IRA bombers. And so he grew up in a family where violence was just part of the deal. So it kind of gave him a different attitude about it. And he very much attaches violence to work. You know, it's what he does. It's his job, and he doesn't worry a lot about it. Yeah.
All right. So one last question before we let you get out of here. But if, say, for somebody that was just getting into preparedness, maybe they've been doing it a while, or maybe somebody that wants to listen to your books because they are interested in preparedness, haven't got into it yet. You talked about Locker 9 and the Borrowed World are basically your two series that are preparedness. Which one would you recommend, I suppose, for what book series would you recommend for somebody that's just getting into it or just has been doing it for a little while?
I think the way to make that decision easy is if you're looking at preparing for yourself or for your family at home, you start with the Borrowed World. If you have a kid who's going away to college and you're concerned about their safety, if something happens, you start with Locker 9. But the Borrowed World is very entry-level preparedness, I think. I mean, it's really good for kind of showing you why preparedness is important and walking you through the baby steps of getting there.
Yeah. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's some kind of blueprint to become prepared or anything, but it's a cool way to learn some of those lessons. And you think about these different scenarios and all that, and it's cool to kind of walk through that situation, and you can say, I wouldn't have done that, or I'd have done that. Just see what these different characters do. So it's a fun way to kind of learn that stuff.
Yeah, because, everybody's preparedness journey and preparedness needs are different. Yeah. So you can't exactly take what that guy did and, cookie cutter them onto your own life. But it kind of shows you what role his preps served in his life. So, you just apply those same principles to your own life, and that's where you get started.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Brian, you got anything else?
No, I appreciate it, frankly, man. It's a good time having you on. Good to talk to you again, and glad we recovered from the early show there, Dale.
Yeah. That was entertaining
it's been good
for
to
you
talk
guys.
to you guys again. I've enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, it's always a blast to have you on. I've done some interviews with some authors, and they're great and all, but not the best interview. You're just fun to talk to. I mean, half of that show had nothing to do with your damn books, and we were just kind of just so many different topics. You understand what this life truly is, this whole preparedness mindset and all that, and that's what makes it so cool. Is it's not like talking to somebody who's faking it, and then you find out halfway through the interview that this dude just wrote something just because he thought he could sell it. So very cool.
As I told you before, I haven't done a podcast in like a year and a half because I just kind of, was done with it. But I came out of retirement for you guys because I have a good time talking to you, and I'd gladly do this anytime.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, we had a blast. It was awesome. Once again, you can find all of Franklin's books are on Audible. You can go to, is it franklinhorton.com where they can find all your books? Everything's available on Amazon. Super easy to get. If you're like me, you don't like actually reading, or you don't have the time to actually read, the Audible books, audio books are great from Audible. Kevin Pierce is fantastic. Anytime I hear Kevin Pierce do a different book, I can't, it's hard to listen to because it's not one of Franklin Horton's books. It's not a dystopian book. So, but very cool, very, very well written and all of that stuff. But again, Franklin, I appreciate it. Everyone in the chat, appreciate you joining in today. And we will talk to everyone later.
Bye, y'all.